guys, to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're going to be making a fancy Greek ruffled pie that is so easy to make. It's beautiful to look at, so it is something nice to serve at tea or coffee time or for dessert at your next dinner party. Or if you want to treat your family with something extra special, make this for them tonight. It's another version of a Greek custard pie, except it's more egg-based and there's not any flour or cornstarch or even semolina flour, which is really traditional in galatopitas, Greek custard pies. So easy to make. You can make it with basic ingredients that you probably already have in your fridge. Let's get started. So I have a 9.5-inch springform pan. This is a pan that you usually make cheesecake in, and it comes apart, and it's a good pan to have for this recipe. You could use a 10-inch pan as well. And I've melted 6 tablespoons of butter, which is about 1.5 sticks. And I just saved the wrapper, and I'm just greasing the pan. Now I have a pound of phyllo that I've left at room temperature. I thawed it in my refrigerator overnight, and I left it at room temperature for the past 2 hours, so it's going to be easy to work with. We're going to need about 7 layers of it, so we're going to work with 1 layer at a time. And if it starts to break on you, don't worry about it. We're going to turn it into little accordions. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. Take some of the melted butter. This is melted unsalted butter. You always want to use unsalted butter in baking. And drizzle some butter over the phyllo sheet and spread it a little bit with a brush. Then you want to take some ground cinnamon and just lightly dust it on top. Then you're going to take it and you're just going to gather it together. Just like this, so it could be in the form of like a little accordion. And then you're going to turn it into a circle, a spiral. And you're going to take it and place it in the center of your baking pan, just like that. The remaining layers of phyllo, they're not going to get rolled up into a little spiral. You'll see what I'm talking about, because they're going to wrap around that original first little ruffle. We're still going to brush each one with melted butter and dust some powdered cinnamon on top. And you could also roll it up like this if you want to, if this is easier. And then gather the ends. Then we're going to take it and we're just going to wrap it around, just like that. And I'm going to do that with the remaining 5 layers of phyllo. Okay, you don't want to pack it too tight, and I'm kind of glad that I got a batch of phyllo that's like this. It's kind of breaking on me. It's not the best quality phyllo, but that will happen sometimes. You're never going to have the perfect situation. Sometimes you will. But anyway, if it does start to crumble on you, this is a very forgiving pie. It's perfect. It's perfect for that kind of phyllo. Like I said, you don't want to overpack the phyllo, because once we bake it the first round, then we're going to fill it with a custard, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. So now I'm going to take the remaining butter and I'm just going to brush it all over the top. It's going to go in between the layers, and it's going to help the phyllo bake to a golden, nice, crisp perfection. I like to place the springform pan on top of a baking tray. It's easier to transport in and out of the oven. The oven is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. This is going to bake on the center rack for about 30 minutes. Each oven varies, so keep an eye on it. As soon as it's golden, then it's ready to take out of the oven. So while we're doing that, I'm just going to wrap up this leftover phyllo in plastic wrap, so that way I can use it for another recipe. And I'm going to store it in the refrigerator. It should stay fresh in there for about a week or so. I bake and cook with phyllo often, so it's not going to get ready. It won't get wasted. So while this is baking in the oven, we're going to move on to making our custard. Okay, so now we're going to make the custard part of it. This is similar to like a bread pudding when you're thinking about custard. If you like bread pudding, then you're going to love this. So I have 1/2 cup of sugar and 5 eggs that are at room temperature. I'm going to add some of the sugar to the eggs. And then the rest of the sugar is going to go in my saucepan over here. So in my pan, I'm going to add 1 cup of whole milk and 1/2 cup of heavy whipping cream. I'm also going to add a little pinch of salt. And this is going to warm through over medium heat until it almost comes to a boil. The reason we put the sugar in there is it keeps the milk from burning on the bottom of the pan. So while the milk is warming up, I'm going to quickly beat the eggs and the sugar together. So once the milk is scalding hot, you want to carefully temper the eggs. So you're going to add a little bit of the hot milk mixture to the eggs and whisk them together. And then to that, we're going to flavor it with a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now at this point, you could flavor it in many different ways. You can also add a half a teaspoon of pure almond extract to this. You can add your favorite citrus zest, whether it be lemon or orange. What else? You can get creative with this if you want to add more things to it. I'm keeping it nice and simple because everybody likes it this way. As soon as the phyllo comes out of the oven and it's nice and golden, we're going to pour this custard over the top of it, and it's going to fill inside the crevices and in between all of the layers of phyllo. It's going to fill it with this nice custard. Then we're going to bring it back into the oven, and we're going to bake it for about 30 more minutes or until the custard is set. Then comes the hardest part, which is waiting for the whole thing to set. Make sure once it comes out of the oven, you run a knife around the pastry so that way it can separate from the pan. And once it cools, we're gonna serve it, and I'll show you what it looks like as soon as it's ready. So the ruffled pie is ready, and there's a few things that I really like to say, and I'm glad that I made this mistake so that way you don't make it. So if you're using a springform pan, there's a high chance that the custard will leak out of it, like exactly what happened to me when I was doing it, but it was too late to do what I should have done before, which is line the bottom and the sides with parchment paper. So basically take a half sheet of parchment paper and crumble it up so that way it's easy to sit in place. And then just stuff it in the pan. And then when you put the phyllo layers on top, it'll stay in place and it'll hold most of the custard in the pan. I mean, there's still plenty. Not that much came out where it's really going to make a difference, but make sure that you don't skip that step. If you want to avoid that mess altogether, you're still going to have to line the pan with parchment, but use a regular cake pan. You could use a 9, a 10, or a 12-inch cake pan instead, not a springform pan, just a regular old cake pan. That'll do the trick. And that's it. Once it comes out of the oven, let it cool completely, or at least to room temperature. It can still be slightly warm. It'll come out of the pan easily. Put it on a cake platter, or if you want to serve it rustic, you could put it on a cutting board. That's also really pretty. Dust the top with powdered sugar and some cinnamon, and it is ready to serve. If you want to take it a little bit over the top, you can put some salted ground pistachios on top, or even if you want to grate some dark chocolate, you could do that on top too. That's just going to make it a little bit extra special. It is time to take a bite. This is delicious. It's not too sweet. So if you like your desserts a little bit sweeter, you can definitely put a little bit more sugar in it. But again, it's not too sweet. It's a little bit crispy on top, but yet it's nice and soft and creamy in the center. It's delicious. If you like bread pudding, this is definitely an elevated recipe for bread pudding. Much better with phyllo. Everything is better with phyllo if you ask me. The exact measurements are going to be on the website, dimitrasdishes.com, so you can head on over there and print them. The link is in the description box down below. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes,